A decorated U.S. Army general, Daniel Zhang, was publicly humiliated and wrongfully arrested on the streets of Dallas, just because of how he looked. The officer behind it, Mark Henderson, acted with cold bias and zero accountability, ignoring every warning sign from those around him. But what Henderson didn't expect was that this time, his target wasn't powerless, and the entire nation was about to rally behind Daniel. Just wait until you see how this story turned from injustice to a powerful victory for truth and dignity. General Daniel Zhang stepped out of the small coffee shop in downtown Dallas, enjoying the warmth of the afternoon sun. He had just finished meeting with fellow veterans, discussing plans for a community outreach event. Dressed casually in jeans and a sweatshirt, with nothing on him but his phone and car keys, he looked like any other civilian enjoying a peaceful day. But that peace shattered in an instant. A police cruiser pulled up with screeching tires. Officer Mark Henderson jumped out, eyes narrowing the moment he spotted Daniel. There was no greeting, no explanation, just a sharp, commanding voice cutting through the air. "Let me see your ID," Henderson barked. Daniel blinked in surprise. The request felt sudden and aggressive, but staying calm, he reached into his pocket and handed over his driver's license. The officer barely glanced at it before shifting his gaze back to Daniel's face, his expression turning even colder. "Where are you really from?" Henderson asked, his tone laced with suspicion. Daniel, still composed, replied evenly, "California, born and raised." But the answer didn't seem to matter. Henderson's jaw clenched. His hand moved to his radio. Without warning, he grabbed Daniel by the arm. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Before Daniel could fully react, he was pushed face first against the hood of the patrol car. "Wait, what's going on?" Daniel asked, keeping his voice as steady as possible despite the shock. People on the sidewalk froze, some gasped. A few bystanders pulled out their phones, recording the scene. A mother with 2 kids stopped mid-step, her face a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "Stop resisting," Henderson yelled loudly, though Daniel hadn't moved an inch. With his hands painfully cuffed behind him, Daniel stood there, breathing heavily, heart pounding. Not from fear, but from disbelief. A decorated U.S. Army general, being arrested on the street, like a common criminal, for no reason. As the police car pulled away with Daniel inside, sirens wailing, the only thing louder than the sound of the engine was the collective shock that settled over everyone who had witnessed it. And somewhere in the distance, the first video clip from a bystander's phone was already being uploaded to social media. Daniel sat in the holding cell, staring at the gray concrete wall in front of him. Hours had passed, but no one told him why he was being held. There were no formal charges, no phone call, no chance to explain who he was. Every time he asked for clarification, the officers on duty either ignored him or gave short, dismissive answers. "Sit tight," one of them said with a smirk. Daniel stayed calm on the outside, but inside, frustration and disbelief were building like a slow-burning fire. In another room just down the hall, Officer Henderson stood by the coffee machine, casually laughing with 2 colleagues. He talked loudly enough for others to hear, making jokes about people like that, always thinking they're above the law. When one of the younger officers asked if Henderson was sure about the arrest, Henderson waved him off. "He gave me attitude," Henderson said with a shrug. "You let people like him walk away once, and next thing you know, they're causing problems all over town." No one challenged him. They had heard these kinds of comments from Henderson before. Some had filed private concerns in the past, but nothing ever happened. Meanwhile, Daniel remained in that small cell, replaying the incident over and over in his mind. The disbelief started turning into something heavier. Memories of serving overseas, leading troops, representing his country, suddenly felt distant and irrelevant. How could this happen here? The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting harsh shadows on the walls. The air felt cold and stale. At one point, Daniel heard 2 officers talking outside the holding area. "Did you see the social media stuff?" one asked quietly. "Someone posted a video of the arrest. It's blowing up." Henderson walked by, overhearing the conversation. For a brief second, a flicker of concern crossed his face. But just as quickly, he shook it off. "Let them post," he said with a sneer. "It won't change a thing." Back in the cell, Daniel sat motionless. But deep inside, something shifted. The weight of injustice grew heavier with every passing minute. And beyond the walls of the station, the city was already beginning to stir. By the next morning, the atmosphere around the Dallas Police Department had completely changed. What started as a single video recorded by a bystander had turned into a national outcry. News anchors on every major network were discussing the footage, showing frame after frame of General Zhang being forced to the ground. Hashtags demanding justice flooded social media platforms. Comments poured in by the thousands, each more outraged than the last. Outside the station, a crowd had gathered. Veterans stood shoulder to shoulder with students, local activists, and members of the Asian American community. Some held signs that read, "Honor our heroes," and "No one is above the law." Others chanted for the immediate release of General Zhang and accountability for Officer Henderson. Inside the department, tension was thick in the air. The police chief, visibly stressed, called an emergency meeting. Officers who had once laughed along with Henderson now avoided eye contact with him. The mood had shifted. At the same time, Daniel sat in a private interview room, finally allowed to speak to legal counsel. His attorney, a determined woman named Lisa Grant, listened carefully as he recounted every detail of the arrest. Her expression grew tighter with every word. "This isn't just a mistake," she said firmly. "This is a violation of your rights at every level." Meanwhile, reporters lined up at the department's front entrance, cameras rolling, waiting for any official statement. The pressure was growing by the hour. Inside his small office, Officer Henderson sat alone, staring at his phone. Notifications from social media and text messages from friends popped up one after another. Some warned him, others mocked him. A few simply sent links to news articles with headlines like, "Decorated Army General Wrongfully Arrested, Outrage Across the Nation." For the first time, Henderson started to realize how serious the situation had become, but pride kept him from showing concern. "It'll blow over," he muttered to himself. "It always does." But this time, it wouldn't. Back at the protest outside, more people arrived with each passing hour. Local news stations provided live coverage. Interviews with Daniel's former soldiers, military colleagues, and even elected officials appeared on TV screens across the country. The message was clear. This was no longer just about one arrest. It was about something bigger, about accountability, about dignity, about justice. And the anger in the air? It wasn't going away anytime soon. Within days, the pressure became too much for the Dallas Police Department to ignore. A formal internal investigation was launched. High-ranking officials from the city council and even state representatives began publicly demanding answers. The mayor held a press conference, promising a full review of the incident. For Officer Henderson, the walls were closing in fast. Witness statements from the day of the arrest painted a clear picture. Dozens of video recordings from different angles showed what really happened. Social media didn't let the story fade. Each hour, new clips, interviews, and opinion pieces appeared online, keeping public attention sharp and focused. The final decision came sooner than expected. Henderson was officially terminated from the police force. The department cited clear violations of protocol and misconduct. The statement was read aloud on live television, and for many watching, it felt like a collective breath of relief. But that wasn't all. Civil rights organizations filed lawsuits on Daniel's behalf. The district attorney announced that a broader investigation would begin, focusing on past complaints made against Henderson. Community leaders started pushing for new training programs and reforms within the department. Meanwhile, General Zhang stood before a packed room at a veterans event, invited as the guest of honor. Cameras captured every word as he spoke with calm, steady conviction. "This isn't just my story," Daniel said, looking out over the audience. "This is a reminder that no one, no matter their title, their position, or their background, should ever face judgment based on how they look." His words earned a standing ovation. The impact of his experience continued to ripple outward. New policies on officer conduct were proposed at the state level. Public awareness about racial profiling reached new heights. For Daniel, the scars of the experience would take time to heal, but he found strength in the knowledge that change had begun, real, visible change. And for Officer Henderson, the career he once held onto so tightly was gone, replaced by a lesson he would never forget. Justice had spoken, and this time it was louder than ever.